Strictly music, only music, and nothing else today. And I have another hit versus hit today. And this may be the most controversial hit versus hit. At bare minimum, it was the most difficult hit versus hit that I have ever attempted. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into Made for Me by Miss Money Long versus Spread Thin by Mariah the Scientist. And you know how we do here at Strictly Music, Only Music, and Nothing Else. We're going to get right into it. I'm not going to tease you. I got Spread Thin. I got Spread Thin by Mariah the Scientist. And let me tell you why. Vocal range and ability, these songs are extraordinarily comparable. They both have a slow build initially, and there's parts of the song, where both of these tracks pop and the energy goes way up. We all know that to be the hook on Made for Me when she says, "Twin, where have you been?" And we have a part of the song towards the end of Spread Thin where she says, "That's why I spend all my time." And then she picks up and she increases her vocal ability and she goes for broke a little bit towards the end of that track. So both of these tracks have a slow build and then they have their high points. So how do you grade something that's so comparable like this? Well, we know here at Strictly Music, Only Music, and Nothing Else, we grade everything in the court of public opinion first. And we grade everything strictly on the music. We're not talking about the artist and their ability in general. We're talking about these two tracks, Made for Me versus Spread Thin. There were two things that made me edge out Spread Thin over Made for Me. It was the overall cohesiveness of the track, and it was the beat. It was the cohesiveness of the track, and it was the beat. Now, on Made for Me, that hook is explosive. However, the vocal range between Miss Money Long on Made for Me and Miss Mariah the Scientist on Spread Thin, it's comparable. So explosiveness was not enough to give Made for Me the edge here. The hook on Spread Thin is equally as enjoyable, and it's more cohesive with the overall song. Let me tell you why. Before we get to the part that we all know and love, there's two brief pauses before that. She sings, then she says, "Twin," pause, "where have you been?" pause, and then she hits like a train, "Nobody knows me," and she takes it all the way up. So there are two very minute and minuscule gaps between the track and the part that we love. Now, not to say that Mariah the Scientist doesn't also have gaps. Don't get in the comments and say, well, Mariah has gaps as well. We know how R&B goes. These gaps may be for breath. They may be for build-up. There can be a laundry list of things that these gaps are for. But if you listen to Spread Thin from the beginning to the end, it flows better. That's not to say that there aren't any gaps. It just flows together better as a song. And since the vocal range and ability of these two tracks are already comparable, the cohesiveness of one is enough to edge it out over the other. But even though cohesiveness wasn't enough on its own to edge it out, I got Spread Thin 10. I got Made for Me 9.8. So what gave Spread Thin that other point? It was the beat. It was the beat. The beat and the cohesiveness. Great beats allow the artist to be more cohesive and flow with the beat better. Now, both of these women, hats off to them. They tore their beats a new one. They ripped their beats to shred. But on Spread Thin, Mariah the Scientist fused with the beat a bit better than Miss Money Long on Made for Me. And if you don't agree with that, get in the comments and tell me why you don't agree. But because the overall cohesiveness of the track of Spread Thin and the beat, those two small talking points were enough for me to edge it out. Now again, as I said, Miss Money Long has the vocal ability. She has the energy. But because these tracks are so comparable, simply being more energetic than the other artist is not going to win you a hit versus hit in this instance. It may win you in other instances. But if that was the case, your vocal ability would have to be so much better than Mariah the Scientist on Spread Thin in order for you to win solely on how you're singing. And because their vocal ability are so comparable on these tracks, that's not going to be enough. It comes down to the cohesiveness of Spread Thin and the beat of Spread Thin. Overall, it's a more put together track. The artist fused with the beat a little bit better on Spread Thin. And it's a very, very, very small and minute margin that I edge Spread Thin. These hit versus hits, they're getting tricky because we're putting some real thought-provoking tracks against each other. And if you don't agree, listen to both tracks back to back. Get in the comments and tell me why you don't agree. But before you do that, listen to both of them back to back and come at me and let's talk strictly music, only music, and nothing else. Because that's what we do here. Don't get in the comments talking about nothing else, just these two tracks as individual bodies of work put up against each other. Not to say that both of these women aren't phenomenal in their field of R&B. We know their track record. But we're talking Spread Thin versus Made For Me. And I got Spread Thin by a very thin margin. Pun intended. Strictly music, only music, and nothing else. Mariah the Scientist, Spread Thin versus Miss Money Long, Made For Me. To that I say, Mariah the Scientist. Strictly music, only music, and nothing else. Like, comment, subscribe. Get in the comments. Let me know your thoughts, questions, and concerns. And get at me, dog. I got Spread Thin. 6 ways from Sunday. Maybe 4. I got Spread Thin.